Namasreshtham manumapi Shachiputram atra svarūpam Rūpam tasyagrajam murupurim masurim goshavatim Radha kundam girivaramaho radhika madhavasham Prapto yasya prasita kripaya Sri Gurum Tam Natosmi Ari Paripalitah Prabalitah Sanandamalokitah Pratyasam Sumanah Falodaya Vidau Samodamamodita Vrindaranya Bhuvi Prakasha Madhura Sarvatishayi Sriya Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ulalasakalpadrumaha Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath E Choi Gosai Rakuri Charana Bandhan Jaha Hoite Vighna Nasha Bhishta Puran Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Sri Radhe. Well, we're still we're on this section in the third Anucheda. So the third Anucheda has two parts. In the first part, it talks about, it just makes a distinction between Jivan-mukti first it made the distinction between sadyo-mukti and krama-mukti. But, and then in the latter part, it goes and talks about Jivan-mukti. So the different kinds of mukti are being spoken of, and as I've been at pains to tell, and I was just looking again at this section that we read at the end of yesterday's class, just read it through. Might be worthwhile to read it through again, but I recalled some of these verses that were in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, and that they were used for describing the spiritual world. But if you look at it here, it says in verses 17 and 18, those two verses were quoted in Bhagavad Sandarbha, and they were used there to describe the spiritual world. But if you look at it, this description is more pertinent to the Brahma realization than it is to even though the word Vaishnava is used. So just I'll read those two verses. It says in verse 17 rather. It says, Nayatra kalo nimishan parah prabhu kuto nu deva jagatam ya ishire Nayatra sattvang narajasthamascha Nivaivikaro namahan pradhanam. So in that abode, time, so it says in that abode, so I think that is this is Nayatra. So the translation betrays the bias of personalism, which is not there in the original. So the original was, this is being now given as an example of the sadyo mukti, the rapid liberation or instant liberation that comes from the practice of when one voluntarily gives up the body But in that meditation that he has there, he's talking that he's ceased from all action, restraining the mind with his purified intelligence. He should absorb the intelligence into the witness, kshetragya, and then merge the witness into the self. Then merging the self in Brahman, a sober person attains supreme peace and should cease from all action. And then he says, na yatra, so in that state, so here it has said, in that abode, so that was the translation that was being used, so I can see why I was a little bit confused when I read the translation here. So it says, in that state, time, which reigns over even over the immortals, has no influence. What to speak of the gods who control the worlds? Nor do sattva, rajas, tamas, ego, mahat, or pradhan exist in that realm. You see again, abode, in that state. So that so the reason is because the next verse comes up and says, Parang padang vaishnavamam anantitat yananeti neti tyatat utsrikshavaha visrijya dauratmyam ananya sohrida hidopaguhyarha padam pade pade. So those who desire to give up everything that is not the absolute truth by following the process of negation, give up all depravity, and holding the feet of the, well, here again, you see, this is I'm looking at this. I'm going to have to go back and look at the commentaries and see what they say. But obviously, as I've been at pains to say, I've already said that once. But these verses that have a Brahma slant to them, they should be taken as having double meaning. So even in some cases, for instance here, parampadam vaishnavam amananti tat. So this idea of the tad-viśeṣeṣv paramam padam that is stated in Rig Veda and so on. This is the supreme destination, is identified with Vishnu, who is the sky deity. Right? So that's also being the idea of the sky. So Brahman and the sky, the all-pervading ether, that the similarity of the material element and the transcendental Brahman are being noted. Anyway, here, so the arha-padam doesn't necessarily mean an individual, a person, but here I put it says he's holding the feet of the deserving one in their hearts. That I would say that, all right, if you take the Vaishnava interpretation, but here we're not looking for the Vaishnava interpretation. Jiva Goswami is not looking for the Vaishnava interpretation. He's looking for brahma-sākṣātkāra. So here, arha padam, you have to take that as padam. The word padam can mean other things besides feet. It just means a place or a situation or a position. So that the goal. So in the hidden in the heart, or holding with the heart, holding within the heart, the secret goal of Brahma at every moment, they should regard this place connected to Lord Vishnu to be the supreme situation. So yes, it's connected to Lord Vishnu, but then again, that param padam, tad-viśeṣeṣv paramam padam, that is not taken by the Brahmavadis, I believe. Well, I have to see whether how that's interpreted. I'll have to go and look at Shankaracharya's analysis of that statement. But oftentimes, when you're reading the Shankaracharya texts, also they take. You can often see that they're also, they don't they're not really necessarily going to be upfront when they deal with the names of Vishnu or Bhagavan, because after all, for them, that's the entirety of the worldly situation, Brahma with upaiti, that is Vishnu. So that can sometimes create confusion even for a Vaishnava who's reading Brahmavadi texts. So then the last two verses were more standard yoga and what you call pratisrava, or pratisava, and returning up, going backwards through the elements until one has, and through the chakras and so on, until one has pierced the sahasrara and attained the divine situation. So that's up to 20, verse 20, that's from verse 15 of the second chapter of the second canto to the 21st. And the second part then, this is the krama-mukti. So yadi prayāsyan nṛpa pārameṣṭhyam. So prayāsyan, that's a future participle. Don't get many of those. A future active participle. If the yogi desires to achieve the abode of Brahma, or the pleasure resorts of the perfected beings who fly in the sky, so that's the videha mukta. This is a state that's talked about in the Yoga Sutra as well, right? Or the pleasure resorts of the perfected beings who fly in the sky, or to attain the 8 yogic perfections, or to visit any place within the universe composed of the 3 gunas, then at the time of quitting the body, he should go to those places equipped with the very same mind and senses. So he takes them with the subtle body. It is said that the masters of yoga who practice worship of God, well, this here, so there's in this verse here, it says, Yogeshwaranam gatimahurantar bahistrilokyah pavanantaraṁ na karma bistam gatim apnuvanti vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajan. So this worship of God, I looked at, and from Sridhar also, he's taken this word vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajan. The word vidya here has been translated in the commentaries, and the other commentaries have followed suit, so nobody has objected to Sridhar's interpretation of vidya here as being Bhagavad Upasana. So I was trying to see whether these can be correlated to anything in the Yoga Sutra. So you have the what's called Kriya Yoga at the beginning of the second pada of the but here also, but the interpretation that Sridhar has given here doesn't correspond at all. Tapasya, of course, means austere penance, and then yoga, he says Ashtanga yoga, and then samadhi. Excuse me. Samadhi, he calls that jnana or self-knowledge. So that's that's the practicing of worship of God. Of course, you have Ishvara pranidhana is a fairly widely discussed subject in yoga. In the Yoga Sutras, it has resulted in vast differences in interpretation from people who won't accept that yoga is actually theistic in any way, and interpreting the word Ishvara as meaning something other than God. That these are widely discussed and debated in yoga circles. But of course, those who follow the Vaishnava interpretation, Edwin Bryant's milestone work on the Yoga Sutra has inserted theistic points of view wherever possible, and he argues very forcefully that Ishvara Pranidhana does mean bhakti of some sort, and this is also in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. somewhere, I know I've written about this somewhere, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, in the very last commentary, the Brahmananda, who has written that commentary, he discusses the question of bhakti, and he says that bhakti is Ishvara Pranidhana, but he doesn't give it that much importance. It's because he puts it in the Kriya Yoga and in the yamas and niyamas. So even though when it states that it says that samadhi siddhi, Ishvara Pranidhanat, samadhi siddhi. So even in the when it talks about Ishvara Pranidhana, in one of the places there it says that one attains the perfection of samadhi through Ishvara Pranidhana. So I would just say that here, though, this the idea that because vidya, how could vidya mean Ishvara Pranidhana? Well, vidya is often used, and you see, vidya means knowledge, and it usually means scriptural knowledge, and quite often it means tantric knowledge. And mantra, very often the word the mantra is used in tantra in particular, is called avidya. So the mantra, along with all the paraphernalia that goes with the mantra, the yantras, and so on and so forth, that all those consist of avidya, the dhyana, and etc. that go with it. So, it is said that the masters of yoga, who practice worship of God, austere penance, ashtanga yoga, and samadhi, and whose body is as subtle as air, can freely move inside as well as outside the three worlds. People cannot have such unimpeded movement in any part of the universe through mere karma, or through mere karma, as it says, na karma bistam gati mapnuvanti. So he has mere karma. These translations are taken from the Gita Press edition, and the Gita Press edition follows Sridhar. So he incorporates, usually in brackets, the interpretations of Sridhar Swami. But here, I guess that Sridhar Swami must have said mere karma, but the verse doesn't say mere karma. It just says through karmas, through rituals. In other words, through the Vedic varnashram dharma system and through the perfection of karmas, one cannot attain those zones that are outside the three worlds. Vaishvanaram yati vihaya sagataha sushumnaya brahma partena socisha vidhuta kalkotha harerudastat prayati chakram nṛpasai shumaram tad-viśeṣeṣv tvativartya vishnor aniyasa virajenatmanaika namaskritam brahma-vidham upaiti kalpayusho yad-vibudha ramante. So this is going through the upper zones. O king, the yogi who proceeds to the Brahma Loka through the bright Shushumna reaches first the abode of Vaishvanara, fire, through the heavens, shaking out whatever trace of impurity is still left in him. He then rises upward to the region of light, where the Shishumaras reside, and presided over by Vishnu, which is like a navel to the wheel of the universe. He ascends alone in his most subtle and pure body to the realm called Maharloka, the region enclosing Indra's paradise, which is adored even by the knowers of Brahman, and which is the delightful abode of gods that live for a whole day of Brahma. Thereafter, when he sees the whole world below being consumed by the fire proceeding from the mouth of Lord Ananta, he rises still higher to Brahma's abode, where the foremost among the Siddhas reside in their aerial cars, and which last for 2 parardhas, the full span of Brahma's life. And here again you see a thing, it says, na yatra shoko na jara na mrityur na artir na chodvega rite kutaschit yat chittato dah kripayanidam kripayanidam vidam duranta dukkha prabhavani darshanat. There is no grief nor agony, neither old age nor death in that sphere, much less fear of any kind. The only agony they suffer is the mental anguish they feel out of compassion when they see people who have no knowledge of the process of meditation as described above, undergoing repeated births and deaths that entail endless suffering. Then, after reaching Satyaloka, he fearlessly unites his subtle body with the earth, and thereafter steadily pierces the 7 sheaths. So here he goes again through the same process of prati-prasava, and steadily pierce. But those are seen as being external rather than internal, or just rather than being the body, the actual sheaths that cover the universe. From his terrestrial form, he passes on to the watery one, and from the aqueous to the fiery sheath. And again, from his fiery form, he makes his way into the aerial sheath. And lastly, from his aerial form, in course of time, he enters the ethereal sheath, which is an index to the infinitude of Brahman, which I already just said a few minutes ago. Again, through his olfactory sense, the yogi returns to the subtle element of smell. These are the tanmatras. Through the sense of taste to the subtle element of taste, through the sense of sight to the subtle element of color, through the sense of touch to the subtle element of touch, through the auditory sense to the subtle element of sound, and through each organ of action to the functioning power or tanmatra of each, and thus all of them return to their subtle form. Thus, reaching beyond the gross and subtle sheaths of the 5 elements, the yogi enters the ego. He dissolves the subtle element into the tamasic ego, the senses into the rajasic, and the mind as well as the deities presiding over the senses into the sattvic ego. Then, through the same process of dissolution, he returns along with the ego to the principle of cosmic intelligence, the Mahat Tattva, and finally to Prakriti, in which are merged all the 3 gunas. And then this is the last verse of the series, tenātmanātmānam upaiti śāntam ānandamānandamayo vasane etāṅ-gatim bhāgavatim gato yah savai punar-neha visajjate. Again, during the final dissolution, when Prakriti too merges in God, the yogi, who becomes all blissful, now merges with that pure blissful form in God. The word Bhagavatim is there, Gatim Bhagavatim, who is perfectly tranquil and bliss itself. Dear Parikshit, he who attains this divine goal no more returns to this world of matter. No more transmigration. Well, from the point of view, so you can see that he's using the term Bhagavatim Gatim, so even though he's obviously describing brahma-sākṣātkāra or Brahma realization, that Brahma and Bhagavan are the same thing, so it's still a Bhagavatim Gatim, and even for the Brahma body, he should have no objection to calling it Bhagavatim Gatim. It's only that he would conceive of it mentally in a different way. So just to, this is, if you recall, I mentioned that the verse preceding, 2.2.14, the second canto, second chapter, 14th verse, which just preceded the Sadhya Mukti section, that said, if you can't do bhakti, right? So if you can't do bhakti yoga. So now here, the conclusion here in verse 33, which was also quoted in Bhagavad Sandarbha. He says, Nahyato nyak shivak panta vishata sangsrita viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhavet. There is no more auspicious path for souls who have entered the world of repeated birth and death than the one that leads to Lord Vasudev's bhakti yoga. Another translation here. For people wandering in the material world, there is no path more auspicious than that by which one can acquire bhakti yoga for the Supreme Bhagavan Vasudeva, Krishna. So that's the translation given in Bhakti Sandarbha 28, so we'll see that again. All right, so that concludes this Sadhya-mukti and Krama-mukti. I think it's quite good. People who are interested in yoga. When I was in Rishikesh, Swami Veda was very interested in finding all the sections on yoga that are in the Bhagavatam. So in the third canto, and also in the 11th canto, there are elaborate descriptions of the process of yoga, and all the commentaries of the Yoga Sutra, mainly Tattva Vachaspati and well, the two, was it? I forgot the name of the other commentary. Great commentaries on the Vachaspati Mishra is one, and anyway, I forgot the name of the other one for the time being. It's just not coming to my mind right away. But both of them quote elaborately from the last chapters of Vishnu Purana, which also have a very extensive description of yoga. And of course, it's interesting to know whether those descriptions are preceding or based on Yoga Sutra. But the description of Ashtanga Yoga, it's found in the Vishnu Purana. It's very elaborate. And but here you see this description here does differ from the standard yoga descriptions, or the standard descriptions that one finds in most of the texts on yoga, especially those on Hatha Yoga, or even the commentaries on Yoga Sutra and so on. The descriptions are somewhat different. There's some similarities, of course, but at the same time there are some differences, indicating that there's probably that the Bhagavatam was drawing on another yoga tradition. But Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutra, is mostly associated with places in South India, which is also where the Bhagavatam is most probably originating. So let's go to the rest of Anuched number 3. So after going through all that about the all that business about the Sadhya-mukti and the Krama-mukti, we come to. So let's just read what Babaji has to say about this portion. After explaining that Priti is the supreme goal of life, and that it naturally results in the direct experience of the Absolute, which is also called Mukti, Sri Jiva Goswami describes divisions of Mukti after death. Earlier it was said that the experience of Mukti can be had while living in the present body. This is called Jīvan-mukti. The state of Mukti after giving up the present body is called Utkranta Mukti, Mukti after death. One can reach this state either immediately, which is called Sadhya-mukti, after giving up the present body, or attain it gradually, so krama-ritya, after experiencing various states of existence in the universe as well as in its coverings. So the first one is called Sadhya-mukti and the second Krama-mukti. To give examples of these two, Sri Jiva Goswami refers to the second chapter of the second canto. This description explains how a yogi controls his vital airs through meditation. He gradually lifts his vital air from the lowest chakra called Muladhara and brings it up to the topmost chakra called Sahasrara. Then he leaves the body, mind, and the senses and goes out of the material universe. Depending upon his spiritual practice, he will enter either into Brahman or into Vaikuntha. This is called Sadhya-mukti. So here, well, no need to repeat. If, however, the yogi desires to experience the various spheres within the universe, then he leaves only the physical body, but carries the mind and senses with him. They can move to any region by will and experience the various types of material pleasures available there. The universe is covered by unmixed elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, ahankara, and mahat. The yogi crosses all of these coverings while experiencing the pleasure of each one of them. Then, becoming free of prakriti and its various evolutes, he attains mukti. So that's so to say that of course, we know that the dhyana, or the yogic process, that was in the Satya Yuga, that was the process that was the Yuga Dharma. So it's not that the yoga process is completely and entirely divorced from bhakti. One can meditate. It's just that one can meditate on the form of Krishna. One can meditate, and there's one, for instance, there's a Yoga Yajnavalkya as a text that is yoga, but it's a Vaishnava text. It describes the meditations that it gives, are Chaturbhuja Murtis, of course, but they are Vishnu meditations. Most of the yoga texts that describe meditations in the different chakras and so on usually are Shaiva in orientation. You see that, like for instance, in the Yonisthana, there's an image of a Shiva linga, and the different deities that are associated with the different chakras are different deities in each different place. In each of the chakras, they have different deities, and so on. But for the Vaishnava meditation, the deities are all Vishnu forms. And this is also even in those practices of yoga, like that there are some, for instance, the Sahajiyas, the Vaishnava Sahajiyas, they adopt yogic practices. Vaishnava Sahajiya is really a combination of Vaishnavism with yoga. And so one sees that in many of the Sahajiya texts that they cite directly texts like the Shiva-Samhita and so on that are Hatha Yoga texts. So I should say that that Sahajiyism is a combination of Hatha Yoga and Vaishnavism. So their meditations, they culminate in seeing the Radha and Krishna in the Sahasrara. And so their meditation process, the lifting of the prana, of the pranic airs, is associated with these meditations. Also, of course, with other external kind of yogic practices, what are called Hatha Yoga practices, where one forces one forces the prana to move upwards. All right, well, let's leave that there and go on to the next section. So, Jivan-mukti, so this is 3.2. So I don't know if we'll finish this today. I noticed that I had mistakenly put the first part of Anuchhed 4 in with 3, so it's not really all that long. Anuchhed 3, okay, so Anuchhed 3.2 here. There was a little bit of a difficulty in the formulation of the translation here, because whenever there's a translation, or when the commentary requires some grammatical explanation. So in this verse, Jiva Goswami has made a point based on a grammatical consideration. So those kinds of things are fairly difficult to translate in a fluid manner, and I had to experiment greatly with it. We'll see what the end result is here as I go through it. Anyway, this section is about Jivan-mukti. So let's see what he says. It says, jīvad-daśāyām api sa tu tad-viśeṣeṣv agrato darshaniya. So in the jīvad-daśā, what do we got here? The description of mukti all right, well, I don't, again, I want to keep clear this, that we're talking general terms here, so I don't want to say his devotee so much. I'd rather keep, because as we went through that section there from the second canto, it was primarily oriented towards the yoga system and towards Brahma-gyan. But certain terminology, like the Bhagavatim Gatim, the Vaishnavam Padam, and so on, showed that it was a yoga that was flavored, had a Vaishnava flavor. Or it was that even for this, the terminology of Vaishnavism could be used without confusing the Brahmavadi, who would nevertheless still understand the transcendental situation in terms of Brahman. So here it says jīvad-daśāyām api. So Babaji in the commentary previously, he stated outwardly that that the jīvad-mukti or that krama-mukti or sadyo-mukti, that either of these states can be the same. It's either for a Vaishnava devotee or for a Brahmavadi, a brahma-sākṣātkāra, a bhagavad-sākṣātkāra, both. So anyway, jīvad-daśāyām api sātu tad-viśeṣeṣv agrato darshaniya. So there are tad-viśeṣeṣv, there are different particularities of this, and that's what he's going to now state. So he's going to talk about both the brahma-sākṣātkāra and bhagavad-sākṣātkāra. That is the purpose of the word viśeṣa here. And viśeṣa will come at the end of this section again. So we'll see that that matches, that the beginning and the end of this section both have the word viśeṣa. And so this one viśeṣa is the brahma-sākṣātkāra, and another viśeṣa will be the bhagavad-sākṣātkāra. So this one, the first one that he's going to do, is brahma-sākṣātkāra, and that's what he says here. Atra brahma-sākṣātkāra-lakṣaṇāṁ jīvan-muktim aha. So now he's going to talk about the jīvan-mukti of someone who is getting brahma-sākṣātkāra. Yatre, this is Canto 1, Chapter 3, verse 33. Yatre me sad-asad-rūpe pratishidhe sva-saṁvidā avidyayatmani krite ity-ādau. So I labored on this translation a bit, and I don't know whether I'm going to. This is what we started with here, and this has also been quoted in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, I think, and maybe not in the text, but in the commentary. But anyway, this is Babaji's translation, and I'm going to change it. It says, when these gross and subtle forms are denied through self-knowledge, being recognized as created out of ignorance, at that moment one attains realization of Brahman. So when we read the commentary, we'll see why we can't accept that translation, right? When these gross, so the verse was, yatre me, yatra means where, ime means these, sad-asad-rūpe. So now sad-asad-rūpe, in the commentary, it said sūkṣma and sthūla-sharira. So but it still, I think sad-asad-rūpe, well, sad-asad-rūpe, how to translate that? Everybody's put gross and subtle, and that's the way the commentaries have taken it. But sad-asad-rūpe, sad and asat-rūpa, I've said that the real and unreal, and and then let's put let the commentary make it gross and subtle. And then pratishidhe. So pratishidhe is also rather difficult to translate. So I put negated. Babaji had denied. So pratisheda means a kind of a prohibition. So have been prohibited, but that doesn't sit very well. Prohibition would be the primary meaning there of pratisheda. And then sva-saṁvidā. So saṁvid means knowledge. Saṁvid is almost exactly like jnana. So swa-jñānena, and that's what the commentary also says. Sva-saṁvidety, we have saṁvid shakti, we talk about saṁvid shakti. So saṁvid shakti, we have sat, chit, and ananda. So sat is the sat, sandini shakti, and the saṁvid shakti, that's the chit, and ananda is hladini. So sat-chit ananda, we use that expression of sandini, saṁvid, and hladini to describe them as being operative energies rather than simply states of being or essential aspects of the svarūpa Brahman. And then avidyaya atmani krite. So by ignorance or by avidya, in the atma, then krita just means done, right? Or made. So, and then iti, thus, tad brahma-darśanam. That, tad brahma-darśanam, that is brahma-darshan. So, what Jiva Goswami, well, let me come to, let's read the other translations first, and then afterwards we'll see what my translation is, and then we'll look at the commentary to see why I did it that way. Okay, so the BBT, well, you'll see here, this is Bhaktivedanta Swami's translation. Whenever a person experiences, by self-realization, that both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time, he sees himself as well as the Lord. And the Gita Press, it is through nescience that the aforesaid astral and material bodies are superimposed on the self. When this superimposition is removed through self-knowledge, at that very moment takes place the realization of Brahman. So everybody's got this at that very moment. So as you can see, the three translations that I read, they all make the Brahma Gyan conditional on the freedom of the jiva from his avidyaya atmani krite sad-asad-rūpe, from the gross and subtle identities that are created in him by Maya, or superimposed, because the word adhyasa is used here. So we have the word aropa, but this aropa is an aropa. I think the difference between adhyasa and aropa is a subtle one. Adhyasa, I think, is not. There's no agency there. Whereas with aropa, because it comes from a causative verb, that it's actually that it's there's some causal aspect to it, and it's usually oneself who does it. So I myself aropa something onto myself, or superimpose something on myself. But adhyasa is the superimposition, the abstract superimposition of upadis or material identities onto Brahman. So we don't usually use the word adhyasa in Vaishnavism, but we use the word aropa. But I have still not been fully satisfied. I did some articles about aropa before, but I'm not fully satisfied with the conclusion. So the translation that I did was, where these real and unreal forms that have been created on the self by ignorance are negated through self-knowledge, that is the vision of Brahman. So not that at that moment arrives, one attains realization of Brahman. That's not stated in the verse at all, right? It says, iti tad brahma-darśanam, that is brahma-darshanam. So all these translations that say, one attains realization of Brahman, he sees himself as well as the Lord, at that very moment takes place the realization of Brahman. These are not acceptable. Jiva Goswami doesn't like them. So let's see why he doesn't. But you see, it's natural to do it that way, because the subordinate clause precedes the definite clause, or the dominant, the other clause. So generally speaking, that which comes first, one takes it as being having a causal relationship on the first, but when Jiva Goswami interprets it, he does it in reverse. So yatra, so let's just watch how he does it. So if you've got the Sanskrit, and if you can follow the Sanskrit, then just go, because this is a pretty, this is the kind of subtle thing that Jiva Goswami does and makes it interesting. So yatra is a pronoun, not a pronoun, but it's an adverb of place, and it's relative. So yatra means where, right? So where this happened, that's where that happens, that kind of thing. Where this goes on. So it's not really, it can be non-different from the seventh case, the locative case of the pronoun. So that's what he does here. It says yasmin. But yasmin what? So you have to say, so yatra, so the question is, when you have you're talking about an antecedent here, that this is this yasmin is referring to something else. It's a relative pronoun. So in which what? So in what? Like there's a question. It has to refer to something else. In Sanskrit, we talk about yat-tador, nitya sambandha. That wherever there's a yat, there has to be a tat. That wherever there's a relative pronoun, there has to be a correlative somewhere, and vice versa. So that's what Jiva is doing, and he brings it out directly. So it says this darshane. So he said tad brahma-darśanam. So the word darshanam is coming at the end of the verse. So he's bringing that back and saying that the yat, that's in the beginning, the yatra, it refers to the darshana. So it's yad-daśāyām. So yatra here should be taken as yasmin darshane. So in that seeing. So what is it? In that darshane, the sthūla-sūkṣma-rūpe sharire sva-saṁvidā. So here, so sthūla-sūkṣma-rūpe sharire. So he just didn't even bother to say sad-asad-rūpe. He just right away said sthūla-sūkṣma-rūpe. Sharire, two bodies, the gross and subtle bodies. Sva-saṁvidā, he translates that as a jīvad-muktim-svarūpa-jñānena. So by the svarūpa-jñāna, the knowledge of the essence of the nature, or the knowledge of the essential nature of the jiva soul. Pratishidhe bhavataha. So that's a dual. So pratishidhe bhavataha. So translating here. So where yatra refers to that vision in which the gross and subtle bodies are negated by self-knowledge, i.e., or in other words, by knowledge of the essential nature of the individual self, the jivatma. So, kevala-sva-saṁvidā vastuta atmani te nastaha eva kintu avidyaya eva atmani krite adhyaste ity etat-prakāreṇety ity-ādau. Okay? So why is he saying? He puts the question, he says, kevala-sva-saṁvidā. So kevala-sva-saṁvidā, by what kind of sva-saṁvidā? By what kind of jnānena? By what kind of knowledge? What's the nature of this knowledge? Well, he says that vastuta, so there's an iti here. So the iti is the samto, is saying what kind of knowledge. So that atmani, avidyayatmani krite, this is the sva-saṁvidā, of the jivatmana-sasang, the knowledge of the self. What is the nature of that knowledge of the self? It's avidyayatmani krite. So the question was, what kind of knowledge? So where it comes to iti, that's summarizing, it's descriptive of the knowledge. Thus, you could say. So if you would put it, if you preceded it, it would be avidyayatmani krite, okay, sad-asad-rūpe, sad-asad-rūpe, avidyayatmani krite, iti sva-saṁvidā pratishidhe. Like that. So by what kind of self-knowledge? It is in knowing that in reality, these two forms do not exist in the self, but have been created on it. Atmani krite. In other words, superimposed on it by ignorance alone. So that there is very good Brahma-gyan knowledge, avidyaya, adhyaste, superimposed through ignorance. So, and then tad-brahma-darśanam iti yat-tador anvayaha. So you had yasmin darshane, tad brahma-darśanam. That is brahma-darśanam. So that vision, or that philosophy even, by which one sees that the gross and subtle bodies have been imposed upon the soul, upon the self, upon the atma, and one thereby negates them or becomes free of them. So that's the purpose of this. So I put this in this way. So that tat is the vision of Brahman, brahma-darśanam. This is how the relative and correlative pronouns where, yatra, in other words, in which vision, going back to the previous translation, and that, tat, are related. The vision of Brahman, brahmano darshanam sakshatkara. So the meaning of brahma-darśanam means to have direct experience of Brahman. All right, so that's nice. He's going to say a little bit more here. So yatra sva-saṁvidē, yatra sva-saṁvidā ity-uktyā jīva-svarūpa-jñānam tad-āśrayam bhavati iti. Tata kevala-sva-saṁvidā na te nishidhe na bhavata iti cha jñāpitam. So why has he bothered to go through all this trouble, and everybody else has interpreted the verse in the way that I showed in the other translations? Because he wants to do it that way. Why? Because he's saying that by placing through self-knowledge in the subordinate clause, right, it is indicated that the knowledge of the nature of the jiva is dependent on realization of Brahman. So tad brahma-darśanam yasmin darsane pratishidhe sad-asad-rūpe sva-saṁvidā. So the sva-saṁ, the knowledge of the self, it comes through knowledge of Brahman. That's the point he's making. It's not that one has knowledge of the self first and then knowledge of Brahman follows that. And that they, the subtle and gross bodies, do not become negated by self-knowledge alone. Right? So just by knowing, just by negating, that's not sufficient. One has to have direct or a parokshanubhuti of Brahman in order to become free from the material identity. So to grasp Sri Jiva Goswami's, this is my comment here, but put it in as a footnote or whatever, or as an aside. To grasp Sri Jiva Goswami's intent, the relation of the main clause to the subordinate clause is clearer if we read it, that the vision of Brahman is that in which these gross and subtle forms that were created or superimposed on the self by ignorance are negated through self-knowledge. So that would be the way we would normally translate a principal clause and a subordinate clause in English, right? I'm going to say it again. The vision of Brahman is that in which these gross and subtle forms that were superimposed on the self by ignorance are negated through self-knowledge. So it's just a matter of, this subtle difference of saying which comes first and which comes next. So then conclusion here, tatascha jivata eva avidya kalpita maya karya sambandha mithyatva gyapaka jīva-svarūpa-sākṣātkārena. I love it when we have these long compounds. So avidya kalpita maya karya sambandha mithyatva gyapaka jīva-svarūpa-sākṣātkārena. 11 words in one compound word. All right. Tādātmyāpanna-brahma-sākṣātkāro jīvan-mukti-viśeṣa ity-uktyā. So remember at the beginning we were saying that there was a viśeṣa, that there was something particular that there are going to be particular Jivan-muktis here. So this is a jīvan-mukti-viśeṣa. By the viśeṣa, he means brahma-sākṣātkāra. So it was tādātmyāpanna-brahma-sākṣātkāro, jīvan-mukti-viśeṣa. So the important word in this little section here is tādātmyāpanna. So this word to tad-atmya. So thereafter, even while still living in the present body, the direct encounter or identification with Brahman through the realization of the nature of the self, resulting in the knowledge of the illusory nature of its relation with the products of Maya, which is imagined out of ignorance, is the particular condition called Jivan-mukti, is the one particular condition called Jivan-mukti, or one particular condition of Jivan-mukti, or one particular kind of Jivan-mukti, I think is the best way to do it. So I didn't really refine that translation. The idea is that the Jivan it's one particular kind of Jivan-mukti when one identifies with Brahma. But what kind of Brahma? It's the Brahma when it's tādātmyāpanna. So this is well, let Babaji explain in the commentary, and then if I have anything to add to that, I'll do it. As said earlier, mukti is of two types, namely the direct experience of Brahman or that of Bhagavan. The first of these is described by Sutta Goswami in the principal verse cited in this Anucheda, the one we've been talking about. In the conditioned state, the self is conditioned by subtle and gross coverings, the mind and the body. Although the self is absolutely distinct from these two, in the conditioned state it identifies with them. This is called bondage and is caused by beginningless avidya. When one gets intuitive awareness of Brahman, well, I don't like intuitive awareness. The word sakshatkara is being used, and sakshatkara means direct experience. So when one gets direct experience of Brahman, we're using sakshatkara. The aparokshanubhuti and so on, these are the terms that the Brahmavadis use. They might use sakshatkara also. But sakshatkara is favored. We favor sakshatkara. You'll find aparokshanubhuti spoken of much less, even though we have, adhokshaja and so on, these terms are used. So when one gets direct experience of Brahman, then one also gets knowledge of one's own self as distinct from the two coverings. This knowledge of the self is referred to as sva-saṁvidā in the verse. The word saṁvit, like jnana, can mean both consciousness and knowledge. It is a part of the vision of Brahman, brahma-darśanam. This is the significance of the locative pronoun yatra at that time or in that state. In other words, in that state of Brahman vision, one has the awareness of the false identification with the gross and subtle bodies. In the process of liberation, in Brahman, the practitioner identifies himself with Brahman. Mere knowledge of the self will not make one free from the two coverings, because the self is atomic in size and does not have the ability to be free of Maya on its own. Thus, mere realization of the minuscule spiritual identity apart from Maya does not lead to mukti. Krishna asserts in the Gita 7:14 that only by taking shelter of him can one get freedom from his Maya. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etang tarantite. Only when the intrinsic potency of Bhagavan descends into a jiva can he be released from bondage. When knowledge of Bhagavan remains distinct from knowledge of one's own self, it is called Bhagavat-sākṣātkāra. There remains a relation of part and whole, lover and beloved, between the jiva and Bhagavan. When, however, knowledge of the self remains indistinct from that of Brahman, it is called brahma-sākṣātkāra. There is no possibility of any relation in this state. This indistinction is called tad-atmya and is not the same as aikya or aikatmya. In aikatmya, there is no separate ontological existence, but in tad-atmya, there is simply a lack of awareness of the distinction, which nevertheless exists. The iron rod placed in fire takes on the properties of the fire due to proximity, but does not actually become fire. That is the difference between the two. The Brahmavadis actually mistake this tādātmya for aikatmya, or ontological oneness. And that is where we're going to conclude today. And that's quite appropriate. We'll finish exactly at 1 hour. I don't have anything to add to that. One can ponder on this distinction between tādātmya and aikatmya. So there is the Vaishnavas, we do accept that there is such a thing as Brahma realization or brahma-sākṣātkāra, and in that brahma-sākṣātkāra there's a tādātmyāpanna state where one identifies with Brahman, but that identification with Brahman does not mean that there's an ontological unity. Just like a drop of water in the ocean, it is that atomic particle of water that's in the ocean that remains, that molecule of H2O, that individual molecule is just one of billions of molecules of H2O that are in the ocean. So it appears to have merged into the ocean and to be indistinct from the ocean. But in actual fact, that individuality of the molecule is eternal, or as eternal as we as eternal as modern physics will allow us to claim. Right. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Purnam madhah purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate. Purnasya purnamadaya purnam evavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam.